Hey everybody, Bridget Lynn Dolgoff, Conscious of Economics and Urban Farm Project. And so I've been thinking a lot, I'm one of those kind of people that especially in nutrition and health and healing and all those things, that I really, really, really try to provide people with tools. So eventually they can be free and they don't need me, right? They can do it on their own. So this video is going to be about addiction, justification being used to justify your behavior and the things that you do. So sometimes when you get, verification from other people, it also may be an entryway to feeding your addiction or whatever you're addicted to. For example, illegal drugs. There are a lot of people that are addicted to ayahuasca right now. They can't even deal with reality. It's like, well, that's always good. Exercise, diet, healers, therapies, medicine, surgery, plastic surgery, animals, hoarding, shopping, sewing, isolation, socialism or social butterflyism, or community. I mean, so the thing is like anything that's taken into an extreme becomes an addiction. And however you're getting the feeding of your addiction becomes your drug dealer. You heard me, your drug dealer. So say, for example, you start working out and then you become excessively working out all the time. And your verification is, oh yeah, look at how, sexy my body is. That's your verification. So it becomes your justification for that being the only focus of your life and how you're dealing with your life, your coping mechanism that actually hides all your post-traumatic stress disorders, right? All those events. Your addiction covers them up. And we shift from addiction to addiction, right? Because it gives us something. It gives us a type of high. Even, gambling and losing at gambling gives people a high. That's why they keep going back, even though they lose. They get this high out of it. And maybe their high or their addiction of choice is self-punishment, is needing to be punished as verification to justify who they are, who they think they are, who they've been told they are. I even have one client who, anytime, we bring up one of her kids, it's instant, and so she's addicted to protecting this kid, even though this kid is not really coping in reality and has done a lot of bad things. So you can't even have an open conversation because her addiction to that protection that is harmful for her, because it means that nobody can talk to her about what the daughter's doing to them as a way of reconciling or trying to deal with the situation, because there's this meetup of this defensiveness. So that's where that you have addiction, is when that defensive-ness raises up to protect the addiction or whatever you're protecting. And so, I see this a lot. Some of the most supposed conscious people are the ones that are most addicted. So there's always, no matter if the addiction is energetic, If it's physical, it's mental, or it's spiritual, there's some defying things that happen. There's this, this immediate response of, anger or hostility, which they turn the situation around on you to justify, right? That is, covering up the addiction, which is the addiction is what they need to deal with, all the post-traumatic stress events that they've had. So they never really actually get to solving the problems, because they don't use the tools, because the tools keep them from, having the addiction, and the addictions can change. I see all kinds of things as addictions. I mean, people that have more than 2 dogs. I mean, hello. People that don't take care of their yard, people that overly manicure their yards. You can just see the addictive behavior kind of all over the place, and it takes like all kinds of forms, but the key is that it's extreme. There's always some kind of component that comes along with an addiction. There is physical, where the person, when they don't have their addiction of choice at that point in time, they physically pick at themselves. They will physically cut their bodies. They will take cigarettes and burn themselves. They, won't eat properly, won't eat at all, or overeat, to deal with a lot of these kinds of things. And sometimes those are also parts of the addiction. Mentally, they'll constantly, like either beat themselves up, or then there's the other side of it where you have this egomania, where the need to be right all the time. Then, sometimes emotionally, you'll have the, where you have these reactions, these emotional reactions to nothing, because it's a conversation, and that, you can't even have a conversation about it because you emotionally react so harshly to it. And then spiritually, I mean, there is no spiritual growth, right? There is no spiritual growth. And usually the addiction, I can even see in therapies, when people go through major detoxing, where they start to become obsessive with detoxing, and they physically age. Energetically too, I see it a lot. If I see somebody and I'm working with them and I notice a huge change in their age timeline, and that they rapidly grew in age, there is something really, really, really wrong. And it reminds me of meth, or, like the dark crystal, if anybody's seen that, where the little elfins are trafficked into, the bad guy's lair, and they're using the crystal to suck all the energy out of the elfins to feed I think it's the skankies or something like that. And so they walk out all like methed out, like the elf's been doing meth for 5 years straight. So whenever I see that kind of stuff, the aging process, because you should be regenerating, right? There should be more regeneration with the healing side, positive side of what you're doing, and being in balance and neutrality, and using your tools, kind of a thing. Shouldn't be eroding you away. If it's eroding you away, for example, there's a point with, infrared saunas where, you should use them in periods to detox and clean out the heavy metals and help to, force viruses out of the body and molds and fungus, because that's what it does. It heats up the internal part of the body, and then it forces a fever, which kills and purifies and pushes everything out to the surface. But I've seen people just consecutively continue to use them like 3 or 4 times a week, and then I really start to see there's a point where they no longer are getting the detox, where they're overly detoxed, and now they're starting to wrinkle up and age, especially around their lips. So there's this fine line and there's this balance, right, that we have to find, because, either side is destructive. And that's one of the things I really like about Steiner's work right now, is that I'm reading about the Luciferian and the Ahriman, which are both really bad forces, but these forces push us back and forth between them. That's why it's really important to stay out of verification and justification, because those things are going to support your addiction, right? Your addictive behavior, your addiction to intake, your external reaction as a response to the addiction. So we have to be really careful about those extremities. So, I have a client that I actually have lots of clients right now that I'm going through the release process, or at least giving them enough information that they can make a decision. And, I know, because I can read their mind, I know exactly where they're going to take the information, because it is going against them having their addiction. So I always know it's going to be the end. And it's probably going to be a way that it's in an end where they're going to raise up and create a story that wasn't true to justify, to verify to themselves, why they're doing this. And they always like to do it in this passive aggressive way. And I don't think that they've really thought it out by, like the way that they're going to handle it. I can't tell anybody what I just saw on here. So anyway, anyway, so, it always will be a friendship ender, because this is the thing, even to continue to have a relationship with somebody, you have to be able to have a conversation. And so even the hardest conversations. So, I had been on with this particular client. And so it's kind of interesting, because I'm getting more time and I'm freeing up my life, and I have less responsibility. And the great thing is like, I give the individual, the conversation, try to communicate with them, in the best possible way that I can. And then, however they take it, they decide the course of action, which inevitably frees me up, frees my time up, frees my mind up, frees my emotion up, and releases me from any kind of responsibility, which is so great. I mean, so great. Because then I can start reestablishing myself and how I want to do things. And also, if I desire to, last night I was laying in bed and I was thinking about all this, because I've been dealing with some pretty heavy stuff for about 2 weeks, and it all like came to an end this morning. And I had like 5 emails, and everybody, I let them have a back door. I talked to them about the situations, let them make the decision, and gave them a back door that they could exit. And all of them took the back door. So it basically starts to free me up. So I was laying in bed and I was thinking about, where I'm going to be going next with the work that I'm doing. And where that's going to lead me, and how I'm going to do it and whatever else. And so this voice in my head asked me, well, now that you are understanding your real value and your real participation in this world with others and events and places, and then being responsible for that information, and then how you're trying to give other people the choice of freedom. So right now I'm kind of playing more interventionist between them and their drug of choice. And so how they respond to it mostly is in a negative way, which is fine, and walking out the back door. But the thing is that it's so great for me because it frees me up from all responsibilities, right? And I can redefine myself, and I can redefine my work, and I can redefine, what it is that I want to be doing. So this voice in my head said, so now that you are starting to understand your own value, and, you're offering people the choice to be relieved of their addictions and the people and events that ensnare them into that, because people that continue to be people's drug dealers, and it doesn't matter if you're a healer, you're a doctor, or a law firm, or whatever else. I mean, the sad part for me is that these people continue to be part of the person's addiction for money. So they're compromising themselves. They are not in integrity at all. The hard road is to say, I'm not going to, how can we have a better conversation about this? Because I'm not going to be lumped into your drug dealers. So you either continue to decide to align with your drug dealers, or you choose to go down a different road and, have a conversation about these specific things. And so when I get released from it, it's great because I don't have to be the drug dealer anymore, and I don't have to compromise myself. And so that releases me from a lot of energetic mess and all of that. So anyway, the voice in my head was so funny, like, now that you're reestablishing value, value of yourself, value of your work, who and what you are, where you're headed, what would you consider an hourly rate? And so I was laughing, and I was saying, I don't know, I think like maybe $300 or $500 an hour, since, the US dollar is worthless, might be a way that I can, start charging for my work in the future, because it is worthless. So, if I charge anything less, what am I really getting in trade, or what am I really getting out of it? And so anyway, it was just kind of a funny thing for me. I mean, I have no idea, where I'm headed with all of this, but the part of it that I'm in is the neutrality, the balance, and freeing myself from, everything in a very communicative way, right? Allowing other people to make the decision. So for me, it works. For me to be released from a situation works well. So anyway, back to my client that I'm working with. And it's online, so the first thing I noticed out the gate was that the person looked like, it's been about 5 weeks, and I noticed that they aged 15 years. Their face literally aged 15 years. So that was a pretty indication that whatever the, underlying addiction is, was astronomical, because now it's starting to do damage, right? Starting to do physical damage. So, I've been thinking about ways to have this conversation with this person, but it finally just kind of came to a head at the front of this session. And then, in a really nice way, I just really tried to put out different thoughts and ideas around the situation, instead of coming out and just calling her what she was a junkie, and, and her addiction to healers and, therapies. But like I was saying earlier, there's a point where, what you're doing is fine, but then there's that point where the addiction builds, and now it starts to work against you. And anytime that you age in any kind of process or whatever you're involved in is the big indication that you are feeding, your addiction in a huge energetic way, that now it's starting to eat you. It's starting to eat your body, take away your vitality and take away your life, and maybe years of your life. And it's a shame, because I think that some of these healers out there are predators, and they are drug dealers. And I get it, they have to make a living, right? I get that. And there's always something, and as long and just like with the drug of choice, the addiction, people are always going to go towards the drug that gives them the most verification. And it could be like we were saying in exercising, like you go from being fat, and then now you're obsessive compulsive exerciser, and then you become really muscular and hot in a bikini when you have your verification and justification for what you're doing. But it also is an addiction that keeps you from working the tools that you have at your disposal. And people don't want to do that, especially in the healing field. People want you to fix them, but you can't fix them unless they're willing to actually do the work. And a lot of times they're not. They don't do the work. They stay stuck in this, treadmill cycle. And it's sad. It's sad. And I don't think that a lot of these other people, like doctors, consider themselves drug dealers, right? I don't think that a lot of people who go to the gym, or there's these exercise equipment manufacturers and all of this other stuff, and protein powders, and these diet books, those people don't see themselves as drug dealers, right? But the problem is that it's all out of balance, right? It's extreme. And it may be helpful no matter what it is in the beginning. Pain pills are pretty helpful in the beginning, until you need to work your tools and stop using them and rehabilitate your physical body and figure out how to do that. So, anything that becomes an addiction could start out as a very good thing, but it becomes, controversial and negative when the person becomes totally addicted. And then you still have the drug dealers who are still participating, even though that they're probably aware, right, that the person is addicted to them, like in the healing field, or doctors or whatever else, right? But this is how they make their living. They need people to be addicts, right? They don't sell all that exercise equipment because people aren't addicted. They don't sell all those diet books because people aren't addicted. And then some people are just addicted to buying the equipment, shopping and buying the diet books and never actually doing anything with them. So, like things people have to realize, like addiction takes so many different, it wears so many different masks. And the verification, which is just justification of protection of the addiction, right? So balance is everything, being neutral and being in balance and seeing things appropriately and working your tools, getting tools to work to you get your life in balance and not from one extreme to another, right? And yeah, and not participating as somebody's addiction, or you're dishing out somebody's addiction, right? And it becomes really sinister when you pay people, or people pay you to be your drug dealer, whatever you're dishing out. The credit card companies give you credit cards so you can go out and shop. They're at it. They're the drug dealers. More banks that give you loans to get yourself more in debt. That's an addiction, and they're the dealers. So you get it from all, like churches, right? Organized religion, they sell what? Salvation. You get to pay them by giving them money at the church, and their whole thing is you come in and they release you of your sins or whatever, and then you're saved. They give you, so their drug is salvation. Yeah, they're drug pushers of salvation, which salvation doesn't exist. Then they have a Bible that verifies and gives you justification for you becoming into a religious zealot. Yeah. So just some ideas to think about. I think life is more satisfactory and less participatory when you're kind of living in a balanced and kind of a neutral way. And that's, freedom. You want to know what freedom is? That's freedom. Anything that we're addicted to, thoughts, emotions, outside of us, inside of us, whatever the hell it is not freedom. It's oppression. So anyway, that's your thought for the day. And I'm going to get on with my bad self. I'm got to do a run and get in before the winds, get too extreme. And because, I'm focused in on losing 40 pounds. So, and I'm looking at it in a good way. And am I going to run a marathon? No, I'm not. And do I run regularly? Whenever it's time, I do it. I don't think about it. I don't think about goals. I'm not using it as an addiction, but it is something that I enjoy immensely. And now that I'm getting freed up from all this other stuff, I actually have the energy and time to actually, start lifting those heels up and heading down trails. So anyway, I hope this helps. I always bring these kinds of things to the forefront to try to help. And, I always wish everyone well. Everybody is on their own journey of discovery. And, yeah, so anyway, be in balance, stay neutral, and don't, damage yourself. Don't go from one extreme to the other. And don't go from addiction to addiction. Try to find more balance and peace and staying neutral. And that's where you're going to find those post-traumatic distress moments that are propelling you towards addictive things and processes and behaviors and whatever else. So anyway, that's me over and out, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks, guys. Bye.